Hmm.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. For those tuning in on the simulcast on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and on X, we're glad you all could be with us today. Going to bring in our friends over on Instagram so they can be a part of our chat. And last but certainly not least, going to connect with our friends over on Amazon Live. Very excited about our next guest joining us. She's written a book that is not only timely, but also, I think, inspiring as well. So I can't wait to talk to you guys about it. We're now live on Amazon Live with Cyrus Webb Presents. If you guys are new to us on Amazon, welcome. Make sure you guys do hit that follow button. You'll find it either here in this corner or down below. You also will see the next books by our guest. Ellen Shapiro is joining us today. Her new book is called The Secret Buttons. You all can see it there in print as well as a Kindle edition. You all can get your copy of it there. We're going to talk to Ellen has hers as well. We're going to talk to Ellen not only about her journey in telling this story, but also why it is so timely and what she hopes you're able to take away from it. Ellen, thank you so much for the time today. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for hosting me. This is a delightful experience.
Well, I'm glad to have you. Ellen, this book is, I think it could not have come at a better time, I think, for all of us. We're going to get more into that. But what has it been like for you to see the early response to the secret buttons?
The early response has ranged from this is the best book I ever read from a
Mm,
sixth grader, 11-year-old, who's been hosting a book club for several years,
mhm.
to teachers who say, I want to buy this to share with my students in my class.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
it's it's been a very heartening early response.
Mhm. Well, I think the reason for that, Ellen, has to be because, for one, I think it will touch people of all ages, as you just alluded to in the response that you're getting. But also, I think it does something that is so important, and you do it without actually making it something that readers will feel like you're just trying to force us to do it. And that is to appreciate the importance of history. Is that one of the things that you hope would come out of the secret buttons? Is that people not only get involved in the story of Annie and Rosie, but also understand the importance of our history so that we can be able to learn from it.
Absolutely. You know, I was teaching a fifth grade class. You have to excuse my hoarse voice. That's just
Oh,
the way I
yeah.
talk.
No, you're all good.
So I'm teaching a fifth grade class at a local synagogue where they usually want to show Judaism and have kids experience as joyous, happy, singing, celebrating holidays and so forth. And I asked the kids, this was a tough bunch because they weren't very appreciative of the lesson plans that I come up with.
Mhm.
What do you want to learn about? And they said the Holocaust.
Oh, wow.
Why is that? Because it was kind of a strange, big secret.
Mhm.
They knew about the baddest bad guy that ever lived, Adolf Hitler. They'd seen movies, but the movies generally focus on the death camps. And there was a lot more to it than that.
Right.
And they wanted to know more. And so when I assigned a task for them, which is to put yourself in the shoes of a survivor of the Holocaust who's made a great contribution to the state of Israel and to the world, they were all in for that. And
Mhm.
they would love to research this person and present what that person had accomplished.
Mm.
So already knew that I wanted to write a children's book,
Mhm.
not for little children. It's not a subject for little children, but for kids age 10 and up, about this period in history, focusing on some experiences that my mother had
Mhm.
as a survivor, as someone who spent the war years in England and who was an immigrant to the United States. But that teaching experience with those kids was what got me going
Mhm.
in terms of starting to write the book and getting deeply into it.
Mhm. Does it surprise you? And I appreciate you sharing that story, Ellen. Does it surprise you, though, in 2026, that history is getting away from us, that the understanding and appreciation of the history and the importance of that history is not something that is, I think, talked about as much today or even appreciated as much today.
Well, first of all, there's fewer and fewer survivors of the Holocaust who are alive, who are able to come to community groups and speak or be on TV or radio. But the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. has just started a big educational program. And people are starting to get interested in it because of what's happening with immigration today. When I started writing the book, and in the middle of it, and even finishing it, I had no idea that there would be such things as ICE raids.
Yeah.
There had no idea that citizens of our own country would be taken away, suspected of being illegal immigrants or murderers and rapists. And so this labeling of ethnic groups, of people from different backgrounds who speak different religions, that's what happened in Nazi Germany and in the countries that the Nazis annexed, invaded, right? And took away people who were not just immigrants, but were productive citizens, professionals who had been born there, who lived there their whole lives. So there's these parallels that are happening now. And today, as you probably know, is International Holocaust Remembrance Day, started by the United Nations, in which there are panel discussions, exhibitions, and so forth here at the UN and around the world.
Right.
So people, maybe there was a downturn in interest, but right now I see a big upturn. You have to make reservations in advance to go to the Anne Frank exhibit in New York City and see the room. It's a replica of where she and her family stayed in an attic, being hidden until they ultimately got taken away. And her father was the only one who survived and was able to publish her book. And I went to that exhibit a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things that struck me the most was these large black and white photographs of the people of the Netherlands, Holland, Amsterdam, staring out their windows, watching Nazi soldiers round up the Jews and take them away. And we're not doing that now. The whole country is getting mobilized. So it's, in a sad sense, a parallel time, but we're doing it. We Americans, looks like we're doing things differently.
And I think, Ellen, as you were talking, I thought about, that's why I mentioned in my introduction, hello to you, the Crazy Kirk Girl over on IG, glad to be able to see you. That's why I mentioned in my introduction how timely this book is, which is something you couldn't have imagined when you released The Secret Buttons. But I think this story does, I think it's why it is resonating. I noticed even in some of the reviews on Amazon here, people were saying, for individuals of all ages, this is history that is necessary. I want to talk about the journey of the two main characters, Annie and Rosie, that we're able to see, because I love the fact that we're able to see them try to not only to be able to contribute to the world, but also remind others that their lives matter, that they have something worthy of doing. What was it like for you to bring those stories to life, Ellen, and to be able to showcase how even young people can be able to make a difference and contribute to the world around them?
I created Annie and Rosie in memory of my mother and my grandmothers, who sewed, who knitted, who made their own clothes, who designed beautiful sweaters and objects for the home. And was able to tie that together with a memory that my mother had. She told me when I was 10 years old. She said, when I lived in England during the blackout and the Blitz, I crocheted around diamonds and I made them into buttons that I sewed to sweaters that refugees wore on the boats to America. She told me to keep it a secret. But 15 years after she died, I told a few people. And they said, really? Did your mom do that? She really crocheted around diamonds. She put them in sweaters so people could basically smuggle some of their wealth to the United States. How many people were there? Who were they? What happened to them? And I didn't know because we never had that conversation. And if we tried, she would have changed the subject anyway.
Yeah.
But I wanted to make my characters a young teenager at the time and an older child, take that ability of needlework and turn it into a positive thing. That they were able to save at least a dozen refugees who came on a boat. So there's a story, a plot, one step after the other, which made that possible.
And it is told in such, I think, a relatable way. And that is what I think is so interesting about your book, Ellen, because I think whether people have ever been outside of the United States or not, you feel like you're right there with them. You feel like you're experiencing the world along with them, but also it's an interesting dichotomy because what Annie and Rosie show us and what we see today is that thin line between hope and helplessness and how it really is about the choice. You can choose to be hopeful and to try to make a difference, or you can choose to sink into helplessness and feel like the world is happening to you. What was that like to play with in this book?
Well, just as a little background, I'd read many books, especially those for children and teens, that were memoirs of Holocaust survivors.
Okay.
Or that were stories about survivors. And some of these are very wonderful and famous books. But the Jewish characters were always the victims, the helpless victims. And it's usually what we call the righteous Gentiles, those who hide them in barns, who bring them food, who bring them clothing, who give them some companionship, who are the heroes of the story. So I wanted to make the Jewish kids the story. And the thing about writing for me is putting myself right in that place and blocking out everything else while I'm writing. And I wrote it in the first person, present tense, in Annie's voice, not looking back on her, not being a narrator who talks about her, but trying to get into there. If this happened to me, if I took a walk to my favorite needlework shop the day after Kristallnacht and I see the glass broken, the cash register open, all my knitting and sewing favorite tools thrown all over the floor, how would I feel? What would I say? What would I do? So I treated every chapter in the book, every scene like that. And as a designer, I'm also the art director, the weather person, the costume designer, the prop manager. And that was the most fun for me, actually. What were the cars like in those days, and the post boxes, and what did people wear, and what hairdos? I wanted to feature all that, and I did a lot of visual research in addition to the historical research to send to my illustrator so she could incorporate all those details correctly in the paintings.
Yeah, love that. So I want to ask you then, as you mentioned how you were writing this book, Ellen, this was not an easy time to go back into, right? This was, as you were writing this, what how did you keep yourself from getting lost in it when you were writing? Because I've spoken to authors who've written similar books, or even actors who are been a part of projects that, depict, some of the darkest times of our history, right? And I'm always curious as to what helped you to pull back. What was it for you that helped you to, as you were trying to be as true to the story as you could, to pull back and not get lost in it?
Well, first of all, I ended the book 2 years prior to when the so-called death operations began in the concentration camps, so that the characters meet one survivor from Auschwitz. And just like my grandfather got out of Dachau, there was a point at which you could get out through bribes and other means. So it wasn't the darkest of the darkest times. And I wanted to show, kind of shine a light on all the positive things that these characters could have been doing up to that point, no matter what challenges they faced. First of all, going on the train ride together without their parents, leaving their beautiful city of delicious foods and Mozart and museums and art and all their friends and their school, and every parents leaving their mother behind. And what could a train ride have been like for them? Trying to imagine that, and interviewing people who took those trains and knew. And then from there, arriving in a new country where the only English they knew came from phrase books for tourists. How are you today? Very well, thank you. Would you like the check? Yes, the check, please. This is not useful.
Right.
When you come to a new country and you're meeting your new family and your new environment, and then having them get teased by the neighbor lads who, because they speak German, and Germany is already the enemy of Britain, they must be Nazi spies. So that it enabled me to create fictitious, it's a fiction book, but fictitious scenes grounded in reality.
Yeah.
It could have happened. It's not a fantasy book. It could have happened like that, and maybe it did, because there were lots of kids from, Germany, Austria, Poland, who came on the kinder transports to England. Perhaps they were teased. How would I make that into a believable scene in my book, and eventually get them to be loved and appreciated for their talents and intelligence in their new environment? It didn't happen overnight.
Right. Yeah. As change doesn't either, right? I think that's the other thing that brings us to present day. Change doesn't always happen overnight, but it can happen. And I think that's what these characters show us in the world that they're able to make for themselves, but also want for themselves too. And I think it's a great reminder for us, Ellen, for sure. Again, everyone, Ellen Shapiro has been our guest. Her new book is called The Secret Buttons. You can get it here on Amazon in print as well as the Kindle edition. Ellen, this has been a great conversation with you. Congratulations on the book. How can our audience stay connected with you, Ellen?
First of all, my email address, if they'd like to contact me directly, it's ellen@visuallanguage.net. It's visuallanguage1l.net. And my website is just visuallanguage.net. I'm working on a new website I want to tell you about, if I have a second to show you, because it's for teachers and parents and students to read the book together and talk about it. And there are questions in here. There's, for example, this timeline, and you click, it's going to be an interactive site. So when you click on any date, you'll get real history of what was going on there in 1938 when the book opens to the present day with pictures, historical pictures. There'll be Annie and Rosie's. See, this is how far I've gotten on it, is this layout.
Oh,
you
nice.
click on any stop on their train route, and find out what was going on in that city at the time.
Oh, nice.
And there's going to be knitting patterns, including my mother's pattern of the Tyrolean sweater, which figures prominently in the book.
Mm-hmm.
It's Annie's big knitting project. And my mother had one of her knitting patterns reproduced in the Spinner and Knitting magazine. So I'm going to include that. So if readers want to knit that sweater, they can download the PDF.
Wow.
Amazing. If they want to make any of the food, any of the recipes for any of the food that's mentioned in the book, they can download the recipe and learn a little bit about its history. So that's what I've been working on now. And there'd be a teacher's guide that's also downloadable that comes with it.
I love that. Bringing the book to life for them. I love that.
I
Again,
hope so.
Ellen, congratulations to you again. Thank you again for stopping by. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate you and what you're doing so much. And thank you so much for the opportunity, Cyrus.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. Until next time, you all make it a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Stream this to your audience.